There is a moment in the Polar Express where the train slows down and all the kids crane to see the magic of Santa in the department store window, and they're all totally knocked out by it. But not the main boy. All he can see is the machinery that operates the illusion, which eats away at his already fragile faith. This is not because he doesn't care, it's because he cares too much. Well, metaphorically speaking, that Santa is all movies and TV, and that boy is me. Ever since I was little, all I've ever cared about, all I've ever wanted in the story I'm watching is to believe what I'm seeing, which gets harder the older you get and the more life takes chunks out of you and turns near impossible when you become a screenwriter and create that machinery for a living. And then there is being a decades-long Formula One fan and going to see a big Hollywood movie about Formula One where a 61-year-old man is drafted to race to save a multi-million-dollar team in the most elite motorsport in the world. So, I thought this was a good opportunity to talk about believability in storytelling, which is the difference between a story that is worth everything to you and nothing at all. Let me say this right off the bat. For what it's designed to do and be, F1 is a good movie, a fun movie. This is not one of those videos where I bash it like a piñata for everyone's amusement. Actually, I'm more interested in the delicate, perilous dance that is the suspension of disbelief, perhaps the most critical element in all storytelling, and how F1 the movie illustrates the nature of it in curious ways. Because Brad Pitt is playing Sonny Hayes, a former F1 driver who never won a race and who hasn't been in the sport for 30 years, leapfrogging over a legion of other way more suitable candidates to race in the most expensive, most exclusive motorsport world championship there is, all of which would never happen ever as long as the sport will live. But is that a reason not to tell that story? No. Actually, quite the opposite. It sounds pretty crazy and therefore pretty interesting and therefore pretty watchable to me. But for reasons we'll get to in a moment, they didn't tell that story. They told a different one, which was interesting and watchable, but it meant that like many F1 drivers who come and go, it was a good sports movie when maybe it could have been one of the greats. Am I being picky? Yes. My son calls this beading it, which he says when I'm exploring the pros and cons of something in unnecessary detail. He's beading it, he'll say. So strap yourself in because we're about to bead it. At some point in your life, while watching a movie or TV show, I'm willing to bet you uttered the phrase, "That would never happen." You may have also uttered its close cousin. No one ever says that.
Are we dead? No, we are just inside the moon. That might be the greatest sentence anyone's ever said.
Let's examine this fascinating, common viewer experience for a moment, because this trivial little sentiment opens up a whole Pandora's box about the meaning of reality. A little exercise for you. This is real.
Can you confirm or deny that you work contract or consult for Davenport's company or any of her companies?
Yes, I am. I'm working as a consultant for DTI.
This is not real.
You wanted me. Here I am.
I wanted to see what you'd do. And you didn't disappoint. You let 5 people die.
What do these two things have in common? They both feel real. The one on the left feels real because of everything you know and have experienced about life up to now. The one on the right feels real because of everything you know and have experienced within that story leading up to that moment. When we see Superman fly, we never utter the phrase, "That would never happen." Why? Because the reality of the story has nothing to do with the reality of the real world. The story reality has been carefully constructed with a different set of rules, using genre and tone and character and plot. The way a hypnotist carefully uses induction to make a person more receptive to suggestion, so that when he tells them that they're a chicken, they believe they're a chicken. The reason I believe Superman can fly has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with believability. which is created not outside in the real world, but within the story itself. That's what a story is. It's a belief machine, so that when Superman flies, I accept it. Within the bubble of this story, if it's well told, I suspend disbelief, and I surrender to it willingly. Indeed, it's what I came for. When you utter the phrase, "that would never happen," or "no one says that," it's not because the storyteller has broken the tenets of reality. It's because they've either ripped the fabric of the story's reality, or they haven't effectively woven that fabric. It means they've failed at the induction, often despite the best will in the world, because, man, it's damn tricky. In fact, anything can happen in a story, and any character can say anything, and the only difference between it being believable and not believable is the integrity of the story world. Of course, this only lasts for the duration of the story. It's a bubble that pops at the end, a spell that is cast at the beginning and evaporates as we leave the cinema or switch off the screen. It never really happened, but that's not the point. For the period of the story, we believed it. It felt real. It felt like it happened. It is fascinating to me when storytellers get this right, what they can make the audience believe. I am a world-weary dude, a writer with many years' experience and a viewer who has watched thousands of movies. And yet, there I was, sitting in a cinema, watching Toy Story 3 when Woody and his pals are sliding towards a furnace, and I thought, oh my God, they're actually going to kill these characters. I can't believe they're going to do that. Which now, outside that bubble, is the dumbest thought in the world. There's no way they would kill those characters. Forget that there are children watching. This is a corporate franchise worth millions of dollars. But in that moment, I believed it. It felt real. Why? I've thought a lot about that moment since, trying to figure out exactly what got me, someone who knows every trick in the book, to believe it. And the answer that I arrived at was acceptance. First, they slow this scene right down. What is unfolding takes an unusual amount of time for a movie like this, which is a primer, getting your brain into the right place for what happens next, which is this. They all stop fighting, and instead they take each other's hands, and one by one, acceptance washes over them. And whenever you get acceptance of death in a movie, because you've seen so many movies before, you instinctively know that that character's going to die. They used my own knowledge of how movies work against me. The way a martial artist uses their opponent's own weight and energy to bring them down, the opponent does themselves in. Which means that when this happened, their relief was my palpable relief. In that moment, I was them and they were me. I had aligned with the characters. To be absolutely clear, I had aligned with sentient toys digitally animated by a mass entertainment conglomerate. I'm not even embarrassed. This is the essence of good storytelling. So, what does all that, in God's name, have to do with F1? Well, it has to do with Brad Pitt, who is 61, playing a racing driver, which, like Woody burning alive, has never happened and will never happen in the history of the world. And so, for that to work, for the unreal to feel real, we need to first ask the question, what actually makes an F1 driver too old to race? And there are 4 parts to the answer to that question. This is an aerodynamic sport with enormous G-forces, and these drivers get thrown around and put under great stress, and so they need to be physically fit. Now, Brad Pitt totally ticks that box, so there's no problem there, but the sport is not like tennis or football where your performance is based on your fitness. More so, your performance outside of talent is based on 3 other things. As we age, our nerve signals slow, we lose motor control brain cells, and our cognitive processing speed slows. And all of this combines to lengthen reaction times. But we're talking fractionally, and this varies according to genetic makeup, and physical fitness has a lot to do with it. So I'm going to let this one go for Brad too. But here comes the interesting part. By hunger, we mean passion, your desperation to win, to prove yourself, to be the top of the heap, to shun all else in your life in pursuit of this one specific goal, often at great personal expense. This is a really fascinating aspect of Formula One because it's been shown throughout history that as a driver loses their hunger, they literally lose their speed. And then there's the prefrontal cortex. This is your ability to throw yourself into dangerous situations without any real appreciation for your own mortality. Basically, how far you're willing to push it. F1 cars don't have speedometers like road cars. Instead, drivers drive according to the limit. The limit is the line that separates keeping the car on the road and it flying off it. The line between maximum speed and crashing. The difference between winning and losing, and often the difference between life and death. The prefrontal cortex has a lot to do with the limit, how close to the line you are willing to go and your fear of it, and retreat from it. Brad Pitt actually has a funny line in the movie where he tells his young rival Joshua that he has a deformed prefrontal cortex on account of his age. This is not only funny, it's true, but it's actually the reason Joshua would be faster than the older, wiser man, not slower. Brad Pitt is 61 and his character has been out of the sport for 30 years, and that sport has changed a lot in that time. I mean, it's the difference between Hill Valley in 1885 and 2015. But what is unrealistic about Brad Pitt racing is also what's interesting about Brad Pitt racing. Yes, I've arrived at my point. You often get this with screenwriting. What you are desperately resisting because it's not what you envisaged and is a real life flaw that's messing with your story can in fact be what you should be leaning into, because by the very nature of the flaw, it's inherently challenging. And therefore, in overcoming that challenge, you can go on a real journey, because the greater the adversity, the greater the triumph. At a certain point, as a writer, sometimes the thing to do is to stop resisting and let the water carry you downstream. This is the moment you lean into your shortcomings. We all know that sports movies, the best and the reason they exist, use the sporting struggle to illustrate the main character's personal struggle. A good sports movie succeeds or fails on the triumph at the end. I'm not talking about winning. Rocky famously didn't win in the first film. I'm talking about personal triumph. This triumph, which when it sticks the landing, rattles your whole body almost physically, lives or dies by the impossible obstacles that come before it. I said this before and I'll say it again. F1 is a good movie and the audience scores say, don't change a thing. But there are two kinds of good movie experiences. The kind where you're fully entertained for 2 hours and never think about it again, and the kind where it stays with you after, becomes part of people's lives, part of the culture, and takes on meaning beyond entertainment. I told you I was going to beat it, but is it possible that F1 is a good movie that could have been a great film if it had leaned into its unreality more, into Sonny Hayes' real limitations? I'm not just talking about age. God knows we don't need another popcorn movie depressing us about being old. I just mean limitations. I mean the sheer odds stacked against him. The best sports movies are about odds, terrible, terrible odds, so that when you overcome those odds, it feels euphoric. F1 is an insanely elite technical sport of the tiniest of fine margins. Play that up. Success for this guy is not just impossible, it's impossible. Like, I can't tell you how impossible this is. Good. The physical limitations of a character whose body has been destroyed by an accident 30 years ago are terrible, terrible odds. Good. Let's see those limitations from frame one, not just later. Slow reaction times, somehow needing to be offset by techniques that no one believes in. Terrible odds. Good. A character with so many years under his belt, carrying decades of disappointment around on his back, trying to find his hunger and passion and failing at it. Good. An older, wiser frontal cortex that makes him fearful of the limit and a repeat accident, which means he has no chance against these younger guys. Good, good, good. And then there is whether this ridiculously closed, gatekeepery sport, whose driver slots are rare, oversupplied and coveted, would even let this guy in. The reason he's let in is briefly addressed, but here again are monumentally bad odds that are another opportunity to slow down and earn our belief, which will pay dividends not just in the climax, but for years to come as the movie stays with us. Hunger, risk, physical limitations, fear, exclusion. Not just good, great. These are things that we can all relate to. We do see hints of some of this, but it's not the actual story of the movie. The story of the movie is about a team $350 million in debt and at risk of being sold. Yes, it has real obstacles and trials and tribulations, and Sonny's relationship with his oldest friend is at the center of it, but it is perhaps missing what makes a good sports movie great, which is that very personal mountain to climb. There are some nods to Sonny's limitations, but these come a little too little and a lot too late. To me, there's a whole movie there. I'm picturing a young Kevin Costner version of this role, like soulful and troubled and aching with demons he wants to put right but can't. Sonny, by contrast, is cocky, utterly charmingly but unsympathetically, and he's got an awesome life. I mean, he's living the dream at the beginning of this movie, which leaves us to worry about his young rival, Joshua Pierce, instead, but he doesn't really have problems either, which leaves us to worry about Javier Bardem, who I really did worry about. I had to fret that this poor billionaire would lose $350 million, which, all credit to them, they actually achieved this. I did indeed worry about this poor billionaire getting his money back, so genuinely, hats off. So far, all of these ideas about how to make a good story great are about story, but storytelling for the screen is an interesting thing because it's not just in the writing. I actually saw this movie twice because the first time I kept getting distracted by little sporting things that wouldn't happen in real life. The second time, though, I made a conscious choice to watch without all that stuff getting in the way. Just let it go so that my thoughts could be baselined and not biased. And I enjoyed it a lot more the second time round without all the Poindextering. But that only exposed a clarity about something else. Curiously, to me, what threatened this movie feeling real was ultimately not Sonny's age. It was something else that caught me by surprise. Formula One's Europeanness. This is where I compare F1 the movie to another Joseph Kosinski film, also co-written by the same writer, and also about another older movie star returning to a young man's game, Top Gun Maverick. But despite everything they have in common, there is something that distinctly sets these movies apart, and that is that Top Gun is a very Hollywood story, while Formula One is a distinctly European one, which goes no matter where you're from in the sport. For an international sport, Formula One is almost comically European, which in my opinion is one of its great weaknesses. I mean, it would be exponentially more interesting with more varied nationalities represented, which is happening slowly. Europeans are a fascinating blend of historic grudges, over-engineered coffee machines, and the quiet belief that they are the cultural epicenter of the world. They are emotionally restrained. They feel everything deeply but show nothing. They overthink moral grey areas, accept life's tragedies with a shrug, treat bureaucracy like a national sport, and somehow make smoking look both glamorous and terminal. So what's a boy to do when he's from Hollywood setting a story in Europe? Not be from Hollywood? No. Once again, I think the answer is to lean in. Allow yourself to be carried downstream because there is more than one kind of Hollywood movie. I brought examples. The French Connection 2 and Ronin, for instance, which both in their style and tone felt more like they were being told from the point of view of locals instead of tourists, despite never not being very Hollywood films. The magic was actually in the blend of these two things, not in spite of the contradiction, but because of it. It makes something special. But the best examples are the Bourne films, especially the first one. A big Hollywood blockbuster event movie, delivering on action and character and plot, giving you a thrill ride from start to finish, all whilst being not only set in Europe, but feeling like you were experiencing Europe. European in cinema means gritty, brooding, naturalistic, muted colour palettes, ambiguity, introspection, moral complexity and subtle, dissonant scores. It's nuanced, moody, atmospheric. Formula One, for all its technical advancements, all its glamour, all its money and modernness, is, when all is said and done, a grizzled old gladiatorial sport of blood and oil. That's what makes it so exciting. It's what makes it feel so real. Perhaps if there was a little less music and a little more sound of the engines, then maybe...
It says...
Did I have a good time watching this film? Yes. Was it a good movie? Yes. Did I believe it?